And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Charles Lloyd, his biography, and best hits. From his early days in Memphis, soaked in blues, gospel, and jazz, to his groundbreaking work with the young Keith Jarrett, Cecil McBee, and Jack DeJohnette in the 1960s, Lloyd has been quietly shaping the sound of modern jazz for over 6 decades. He's a musician whose tenor sax and flute speak with warmth, lyricism, and a kind of spirituality that reaches across generations. So we're going to be talking about his biography, tracing a life danced on many shows, from Memphis clubs to Monterey festival stages, from a period of retreat in Big Sur to a remarkable late career resurgence on ECM and Blue Note. You'll hear about the moments that made him a star, the retreats that shaped his voice, and the collaborations that expanded his musical horizons. Then we'll dive into his landmark albums: the 1960s Quartet, Dreamweaver, Forest Flower, Journey Within, the ECM period, Fish Out of Water, Canto, The Water is Wide, Mirror. We're going to be talking about the moods and the magic that made Charles Lloyd sound timeless. On this week's episode, it's about Charles Lloyd, his biography, and best hits. During this summer, we're going to be talking about his biography. Charles Lloyd was born in 1938 in Memphis, Tennessee, and blues, gospel, jazz, soul, it runs all throughout that city like the Mississippi itself. As a young man, Lloyd soaked it all in. He grew up around musicians who would become legends, people like Booker Little, even blues giants like Howlin' Wolf. This wasn't classroom jazz. This was music learned by being present, by listening, by standing close to the fire. Eventually, Lloyd headed west to study music at the USC in Los Angeles, but even there his education didn't stop at textbooks. In the early 1960s, he began working professionally with drummer Chico Hamilton, later joined the Cannonball Adderley Quintet. Those years were crucial, not just because Lloyd was trying to sound like anyone else, but because he was learning how to lead while still being open. By 1964, Charles Lloyd was already ready to step forward on his own. He recorded his debut album Discovery and soon after began assembling the band that would change everything. And this was where the story really takes flight. In 1965, Lloyd formed a quartet that in hindsight feels almost unreal. On piano, a young Keith Jarrett. On bass, Cecil McBee. On drums, Jack DeJohnette. At the time, these were hungry, searching musicians, not yet household names. Together, they created something that felt completely new. Their 1966 album Dreamweaver announced a change. It blended modal jazz, folk-like melodies, open improvisation, and a sense of joy that was impossible to fake. Then came Forest Flower live at Monterey, recorded in 1967, an album that didn't just make Charles Lloyd famous, it changed the audience for jazz. Recorded at the Monterey Jazz Festival, Forest Flower became one of the first jazz albums to sell over 1 million copies. That was unheard of. Suddenly, jazz wasn't confined to clubs. Lloyd's quartet was playing rock avenues, festivals, even sharing bills with Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. And yet, this is important, the music never chased trends. It didn't pander, it simply opened its arms. That openness caught the attention of Miles Davis, who famously hired Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette after hearing the group. And then something unexpected happened. At the height of his fame, where most musicians would push harder, tour more, record more, Charles Lloyd walked away. By 1970, he withdrew from the music scene almost entirely. He moved to Big Sur, lived quietly, and played only for himself and close friends. There were private jams, even casual sessions with the Beach Boys, but no big career moves. When he re-emerged in the 1980s, it wasn't with noise, it was intention. A live album here, a tour with Michael Petrucciani there, and then in 1989, a partnership that would define the next chapter of his life, ECM Records. Over the next 25 years, Charles Lloyd recorded 16 albums for ECM, each one marked by space, patience, and deep feeling. His sound became more spiritual, more inward, and never detached from the blues roots of Memphis. He played with young innovators, sometimes in quartets, sometimes in duos. In 2011, Lloyd signed with Blue Note Records, entering what many consider one of the most creative late periods in modern jazz. He formed new groups, including the Marvels, blending jazz with Americana, folk, gospel, and global textures. In 2015, Charles Lloyd was named an NEA Jazz Master, even into his 80s and now well beyond. Lloyd continues to record, to perform, to search. His 2024 release, The Sky Will Still Be There Tomorrow, proves that his voice is not fading. Charles Lloyd once described his music as having danced on many shows. That might be the most perfect summary of his life. Blues and jazz, rock and folk, silence and sound, fame and retreat. Through it all, he's remained true to one thing: beauty. And that's what you hear when Charles Lloyd plays, not flash, not force, but on this week's episode, it's about Charles Lloyd, his biography, and best hits. Now it's time for some trending music news. San Francisco trumpeter and vocalist Cameron Washington is taking his New Orleans-inspired project Lazy Californians global with their debut album Back to San Francisco, dropping February 30th on Angel Island Records. This record pulls the soul of New Orleans jazz and brass bands and blends it with funk, hip-hop, R&B, blues, and Afro-Cuban rhythms. Cameron says, "I knew I had a sound in my head that was something different, and that vision comes through loud and clear. You've got second-line grooves, meter-style funk, bounce beats, soulful vocals, and horn lines that are absolutely dynamic." The title track, Back to San Francisco, sets the tone with classic jazz horns over hip-hop and soul, while tracks like Ricochet bring raw New Orleans bounce energy. Even the blues classic I Ain't Drunk gets flipped into a high-energy, horn-driven party. Back to San Francisco lands February 30th, and Cameron Washington and Lazy California celebrate with a release show later that night at the Bodega in San Francisco. And there was some trending music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Charles Lloyd's best albums of all time. Stay tuned. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Charles Lloyd, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. So we're going to be talking about the classic 1960s quartet of Charles Lloyd, the period that put him on the map and changed the way the world heard jazz. 4 landmark albums: Dreamweaver, Forest Flower, Live at Monterey, Lovin', and Journey Within. We're going to be talking about the debut freshness of Dreamweaver, where Lloyd's lyrical tenor and Keith Jarrett's playful piano first met in the world. Then the festival magic of Forest Flower, the album that made him a star and drew audiences from jazz fans to rock enthusiasts alike. We'll talk about the psychedelic energy of Lovin', recorded live at the Fillmore West, and finish with the meditative spirituality-tinged moods of Journey Within, Duke. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Charles Lloyd, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. We are diving into a very special corner of jazz history, the 1960s quartet of Charles Lloyd. This was a period when jazz was stretching, breaking out of the club scene, flirting with rock festivals, and speaking directly to a younger, adventurous audience. And at the center of it all was Charles Lloyd, tenor saxophone and flute in hand, Keith Jarrett on piano, Cecil McBee on bass, Jack DeJohnette on drums. So we're going to be taking a look at 4 albums that defined his era: Dreamweaver, Forest Flower, Live at Monterey, Lovin', and Journey Within. Each album tells a part of a story of Lloyd's early vision: lyrical, melodic, adventurous, and utterly human. Let's start with Dreamweaver. Recorded in 1966, this was the quartet's debut on Atlantic Records. It immediately signaled something new in jazz. Tracks like Sombrero Jam and Love Song to a Baby showcased the band's youthful energy and Lloyd's lyrical sensibility. Critics at the time and even today describe Dreamweaver as a breath of fresh air. That's exactly what it is. You hear Lloyd finding his voice, Jarrett exploring every harmonic possibility, DeJohnette and McBee locking in grooves that feel both effortless and exhilarating. Even decades later, listening to this album feels like entering a world of discovery, exactly what the title promises. From there, the quartet's momentum called into Forest Flower, Live at Monterey in 1967. This is the record that truly put Charles Lloyd on the map. Recorded live at the Monterey Jazz Festival, the album features a 2-part suite, Sunrise and Sunset. It's expansive, joyous, somehow spiritual. Lloyd's tenor sings with purity and fever that captures both the intimate and the epic. Jarrett's piano dances across the keys, McBee's bass provides warmth and grounding, and DeJohnette's drumming drives the music forward while leaving room to breathe. Forest Flower wasn't just a critical success, it became one of the first million-selling jazz albums. And it did something even more remarkable. It attracted listeners who had never considered jazz before. Rock fans, festival goers, even young hippies at Monterey were drawn to this music. Miles Davis himself took notice, hiring both Jarrett and DeJohnette after hearing this album. Next up, we turn to Lovin', also released in 1967. Here, Lloyd's quartet was stretching further, opening for rock acts at San Francisco's Fillmore Week, embracing a psychedelic energy that reflected the era. This album is rawer, less polished than Dreamweaver, but that's part of its charm. You feel the excitement of the moment, the audience buzzing, the quartet taking risks. Tribal dance and temple bells captures that acid hippie zeitgeist, while Lloyd even interprets a Beatle tune here, there, and everywhere, bridging jazz with pop. Jarrett delivers fiery solos, Lloyd sings a little, and the rhythm section pulses with life. A snapshot of 1967 in all its adventurous experimental glory. Finally, we come to A Journey Within, also from 1967, another live document of Lloyd's expanding vision. This album leans more meditative than Lovin', with extended spacious pieces like Love Song to a Baby and Lonesome Child. There's a spiritual quality here. Unlike the Fillmore energy of Lovin', Journey Within offers a glimpse into the contemplative side of Lloyd's 1960s quartet. So when you listen to these 4 albums together, you hear the full arc of a remarkable period, from the debut freshness of Dreamweaver, the experimental pulse of Lovin', and the inward reflective meditations of Journey Within. It's a story of a band taking jazz into new territories, blending tradition with adventure, melody with improvisation, intellect with emotion. And that's what makes it all work. Charles Lloyd himself, with the opening for Jimi Hendrix, playing a festival stage or performing for a quiet audience, Lloyd was always present, always communicating, always searching for beauty. One thing to notice across these records is how the quartet balances structure and freedom. You can hear it in the transitions, a soft ballad moving into a fiery solo, a lyrical melody giving way to abstract improvisation. There's a sense of conversation between the instruments, between the band and the audience, and ultimately between the music and the listener. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Charles Lloyd, his biography and best hits. Now it's time for some trendy music news. The Beetroot Road are bringing together artists from across the world together on their genre-blending album Human Animal, out now. This is post-genre music at its best, 10 tracks that look at what it really means to be human without taking sides and without playing into noise and division. Instead, Human Animal is about empathy, connection, joy and struggle. The project features collaborations from over a dozen countries, blending styles, sounds and cultures into something that feels global, modern and completely its own. Think fearless creativity but grounded in real instruments, real voices and real emotion. Even though the songs experiment with different genres and textures, every track keeps danceable energy at the core, tied together by a unique rhythm section of fiddle, bass and organ. So this is music made by humans, for humans, creative, bold and original. And there was some trendy music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Charles Lloyd's best albums of all time. Stay tuned.